This is your captain speaking. We are now at cruising altitude. If you look to your left, you can see Antifa burning down a city and people being ousted from their jobs for innocuous comments that would have been considered restrained yesterday. If you look to your right, you'll see a bunch of sniveling cowards who have the backbone of a houseplant and who left the moral high ground in their other pants. Looking forward, it seems like we're hitting a patch of turbulence, but don't worry, folks. I'm sure we'll be on solid Earth soon enough. Just, not too soon, I hope. This is Americanitis, episode 28 for July 11th. I'm your host, Daniel Sagner. This podcast contains harsh language and covers adult topics. You will be challenged by views with which you do not agree. We may not be politically correct, but we are correct about politics. Those that are protesting the American way of life and institutions that structure our society don't know what they're fucking with. The world as it exists right now is unprecedented. I'm not talking about technology and transportation and global trade. I'm talking about the ideas that make those things possible. You see, the natural state of mankind is not what you see around you. The default state for a man or for a group of men is misery. It is despotism. It is brutality writ large. As evidence, I present you with all of human history. Some places are still like that. The slave trade is alive and well in the darker recesses of the world. Savage gangs rule some third world countries, making those around them cower and wish for death. This is the natural state of affairs when men do not think. But when care is taken to write the rule book for man's behavior, when reason is applied to the problem of survival, when we think deeply and honestly about how we ought to conduct ourselves, what emerges is a beautiful symphony of individuals all working to better their lives. What emerges is the rights of man and the Bill of Rights. This metamorphosis took a long time, and it only just happened. Humans invented tools about 2 million years ago. Let's take that as the start of humanity's timeline. If you took human history and compressed it into 1 year, then the ideas that lead to human freedom and flourishing have existed for just over 1 hour. We had 364 days of barbarism and chaos, bloodshed and slavery, despotism and superstition, and now, for 1 brief hour on December 31st, some astounding geniuses finally put into words and into action the liberation of the human spirit. Finally, it was recognized that man's reason is his means of survival. This is an earth-shattering accomplishment, and it was hard-won. We should take a moment to lift our heads in admiration and appreciation to the men before us who had the fortitude to enact such a change. It's hard to imagine things as different than they are, especially when you're trying to imagine them as worse, and especially at this scale. We take certain things for granted. For example, the concept of human beings having rights. Humans, by their nature as rational beings, have rights, but the discovery of what those rights are and how they ought to be preserved is a very recent accomplishment. They're spelled out in the Declaration of Independence, but the primary is the right to life. Everything else follows. In order to live, man must use his mind, freedom of speech. In order to live, man must produce and be able to dispose of the product of his labor, the right to property. In order to live like a man must be able to gain and keep his values, the pursuit of happiness. Everything I just said is anathema to what has been termed the woke ideas currently spreading throughout this country. This includes postmodernism, intersectionality, social justice, and democratic socialism, and many others. They all share one thing in common. They reject man's reason. They might not say it outright, but it's written across the entire movement. Terms like unconscious bias and white fragility are so desperate to put people into groups and deny their individuality that they don't even hide the ball. Democratic socialism barely deserves a mention. I refer you to the USSR, the Khmer Rouge, the Great Leap Forward. People are the means, not the end. The end is control, power. To have this kind of power over people, you must deny their minds. For if man cannot reason, if he is an unthinking brute, then he must be led as a brute by force. You cannot reason with a cow. You must prod them, human as cattle. This is the end of the road for today's woke agitators. Far from looking for justice, they seek subjugation, social subjugation warriors. To them, the concept of property is a byproduct of the patriarchy. It's racist and must be destroyed. The idea of freedom of speech means that all ideas can be heard, even the ones that threaten their ideas. It must be torn down. They cannot allow for people to follow their own purpose in life. What if your purpose opposes their goals for society? They must bring people to heel and re-educate them in the error of their ways. The vast majority of Americans do not agree with these stances, but they are unable to fight them. They are blind, both willingly and unwillingly. At once, they do not want to look at the problem too closely, and they do not have the tools to do so. They cannot see the coming storm. When I talk about American fragility, this is what I mean. Our culture is one of action and not of deep thought. Americans are both propelled forward and mired down by pragmatism. We tend to want to get things done quickly and efficiently. That is a wonderful characteristic when working on an assembly line or try to start a business. However, it blinds my countrymen to the evils in front of them. They are naive. Frankly, they've never heard the other side of the argument. They've never heard that the answer to poor education, to racism, to poverty is freedom. They have been told that man is inept. We cannot know the world as it truly is, that you are only important as a part of a group, and that it's right to sacrifice yourself on the infinite pyre of their false god, the common good. That is what we are really fighting. It's not the SJWs that we need to concern ourselves with. They're scared kids playing with heavy machinery they have no idea how to operate. They would have no traction whatsoever if there was any understanding of whence our rights come. The average man has no idea why he has rights, and he feels he cannot defend them. When faced with a confident opponent who seems to have all the answers and is also righteously indignant, they are very likely to fall into that trap that has been laid for them since childhood. Moral relativism. Who am I to say? Maybe they're right. I don't know. How can anyone know? I guess if they all say so, it must be true. Plus, I don't have time to argue. I have things to do. American fragility is this feeling, a complete impermanence of convictions. There is no spirit to fight back against the onslaught of our would-be murderers because we can't put forth the effort to see that they are murderers. Less than 250 years after our founding, every intellectual in our universities calls for the nation to be burned to the rafters. They are not new. They are the same altruist collectivists that have been calling for man to be brought low since the dawn of civilization. They were temporarily overwhelmed when this country was founded, but they are legion, and they have regrouped. The bulwark against these commies, these brutes, these blue-haired masses yearning for control, the wretched refuse of the USSR, is the American sense of life. Americans who do not have a deliberately chosen philosophy still have some respect for individualism and rights. Even if they can't articulate why, they are repulsed by the ideas of socialism, top-down control, being told what to think and say. Defiance, not obedience, is the Americans' answer to overbearing authority. But they are not playing with a full deck. They need help. A general feeling of freedom is good isn't enough when faced with an entire society screaming at you from every angle that you must sacrifice for the group and that any sign of resistance is because you're a racist, that you don't really own your property, and that your children need to be taught intersectional theory in math class. What they need is a philosophy for living on Earth. What they need is intellectuals who can digest the finer points of a philosophy and translate it for the public. That's what I'm trying to do here. But I'm not alone. I may be the one describing American fragility, but there are others like me trying to break past the noise and provide a foundation for resistance. If you are listening to me, but have not discovered these intellectuals, then you are doing yourself a disservice. Link in the show notes and in the description for Yaron Brook, Kirk Wilcox, Diego da Silva, and Rucka Ali. If you care about ideas and think that this country is worth saving, you owe it to yourself to listen to these men. They got all the ammunition you'll need. Last week was Independence Day, and a wonderful story came out of the most unlikely of places, California. As Californians were told that there would be no public gatherings for fireworks, and that they were not allowed to set them off themselves, the following clip aired.
The past 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so, and there are massive fireworks going off pretty much in every direction that you see here. Jasmine, our local fire departments and police departments have been begging people not to do this, right, but it seems tonight they are not listening to those calls.
Well, and they're putting up new warnings on social media. I mean, they're saying safe and sane are even banned in the majority of cities in LA County, not to mention the city of LA has a ban as well. We know many of the public shows have been canceled, so we've done stories on this. More people have been, unfortunately, setting off illegal fireworks. I mean, it is quite the sight, but this is not supposed to be happening. I mean, you could be fined up to $50,000.
Listen to the confusion in their voices. Why aren't the serfs listening to their masters? We don't understand. We all told them not to. Why don't they obey us? Maybe because that's the fucking point of the 4th of July, you bootlickers. If Americans rolled over every time they were told, you'd be living in a British colony right now. The fact that this happened in California gives me great hope. Maybe those folk have been pushed too far. Maybe they discovered the government isn't the answer for everything. Maybe they woke up one day and said, fuck the man. I'm having a barbecue and lighting some bottle rockets. You know what? Good. I can work with that. It's a start. Got a topic or feedback? The podcast is at Americanitis Tech. You can also follow me at Dan Sagner. My last name is spelled Sierra Alpha Golf November Echo Romeo. Please subscribe via Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts if podcasts are your thing. I'm also on YouTube, so remember to annihilate that subscribe button. Patronize us at patreon.com/techside. Show notes are at techside.net/Americanitis. Theme music by Eddie. I thank you all for listening. Later days.